Everyone for joining us this afternoon. Today we've got a really fantastic webinar and panel for you all on the lessons from the field, teacher apprenticeship models to address teacher shortages. So my name is Nyoka Clark, and I am a senior consultant with TPMA. But prior to coming to TPMA, I spent about 15 years in K-12 education as a high school English teacher and as a high school administrator. So this topic is very near and dear to my heart, and I'm so thankful to be part of this conversation this afternoon. So during the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A function that you should see at the bottom of your screen to ask our panelists any questions you have throughout the discussion. So we're going to keep that Q&A box open. So once we get through our discussion questions with our lovely panelists, we're going to open it up to the floor for questions. So as we're moving throughout the panel this afternoon, please use that Q&A feature so we can make sure that we get your questions answered during it. So speaking of our wonderful panelists, I'm joined today by Dr. Charlene Russell, the Middle Tennessee Regional Manager for Tennessee's Grow Your Own Center, and Dr. Carla Warren from the West Virginia Department of Education. Vicki Thompson was supposed to be our third panelist this afternoon, but unfortunately she was unable to join us today. But we're so thankful for Dr. Warren and Dr. Russell to be here with us this afternoon to share their experience and their expertise in this area of innovative approaches to teacher apprenticeship models. So welcome so much, Dr. Russell and Dr. Warren. We're so thankful to have you with us this afternoon. So for our first question today, I'd like you to both just briefly tell us a little bit about who you are and give us some insight into your professional background. So Dr. Russell, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Thank you. Yes, so my name is Dr. Charlene Russell, and I am an educator myself. So I spent 16 years as a high school science teacher and intervention coordinator. In 2020, I transitioned to the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development as the first Middle Tennessee apprenticeship director. And so in that space, I worked to build over 40 new registered apprenticeship programs in several industries, and was part of the process of getting the very first registered teacher apprenticeship established here in Tennessee in 2022. So with the establishment of that registered apprenticeship program for teachers, I then transitioned in December of 2022 to the Tennessee Grow Your Own Center, where I now serve over 40 counties in Middle Tennessee, and I serve 4 EPPs in growing and strengthening the teacher pipeline here in Tennessee. So that's who I am professionally. It's been a journey of love to be able to combine education and my experience in the apprenticeship world and bring this innovative pathway to the education industry.
Well, we are so thankful to have you here this afternoon, Dr. Russell. Thank you so much for joining us. And Dr. Warren, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you and your professional background.
Sure, thank you. It's great to be here with you this afternoon. My name is Carla Warren. I currently serve as the officer for the Division of Academic Support and Educator Development at the West Virginia Department of Education. I spent 20 years in the classroom and then 10 years at an education agency where I worked with national board certification, mentoring, and teacher induction. I've been at the Department of Education for about 6 years now and work with PK-12 academics, certification, and educator development and support. So in West Virginia, we followed Tennessee. Tennessee led the way, and we were the second state to register the teaching occupation as a registered apprenticeship in May of 2022. And we have multiple on-ramps in West Virginia for our students and for our adults who are pursuing teacher certification. We have multiple alternative certification pathways, traditional preparation, and then our Grow Your Own West Virginia Pathway to Teaching focuses on a youth apprenticeship where our students begin in high school. It's really a 1+3 model where they complete a year of college credit at no cost while they are still in high school, and then they transition out and complete their clinical experience as the teacher of record in their senior year of college. And then we're preparing to launch next month a paraprofessional pathway to support our paraprofessionals through a combination of a partnership with iTeach and Passages, study.com, and Workforce West Virginia, where we will be able to provide a no-cost opportunity to our paras who already hold a bachelor's degree to complete their teacher licensure. So I have a lot more to share later on in the webinar, but that's just a quick background.
Wow, sounds like a lot of really innovative things are happening in West Virginia in this space. That's so exciting. I'm so thankful you're here with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
So my first major question for both of you is, we keep hearing about the teacher shortage in America. We've been hearing about it for a couple of years. It feels like it has really started to ramp up. We're starting to feel the effects of it in a lot of school districts throughout the country. So talk to me a little bit about why that is significant. Why is it significant that we're starting to experience this teacher shortage? And why should we be concerned about this and start pursuing some of these innovative models? So I'll open the floor up to both of you for that.
I'll go first this time, Charlene, and then I'll throw it back to you. So in talking to other states, we know that this is a nationwide challenge. Every state is facing shortages in some areas, it seems. Of course, West Virginia is rural. We have a lot of low SES students. We have first-generation college-going students. And if you look at our topography, if you look at our access to broadband, internet, you can go right down the list of why we are experiencing shortages. We have fewer students entering teacher education in a traditional program. We have fewer completers, and we just don't have the number of students who are expressing an interest in becoming teachers. So I really have followed a lot of the work of Prentice Chandler at Austin Peay University. And he says it's not a lack of interest, it's a lack of opportunity. So really sitting down with my staff, with our partners, and saying, what are the barriers to becoming a teacher in West Virginia, and how can we eliminate those barriers one by one? So strong partnerships with our EPPs, our Department of Labor, our Department of Commerce, our legislature. This is not a single problem. This is a multi-channel problem, and it needs to be the village creating solutions to this problem. So in West Virginia, we are reporting that we have about 1,544 positions that do not have a fully certified teacher for that content area in that position. We look at our second month report every year to identify what that number is. So we know that we have about 500 teachers graduating from the 18 educator preparation programs in our state. And so if you do the math, you see that we are not filling our classrooms with fully certified teachers. And we believe with all our hearts that every child deserves a fully certified teacher every year in every class, no matter what their zip code, whether it be a zip code within the state or without. So trying to identify innovative ways. And we know anytime you look at innovation, you've got to look at failure before you get to success. So at the end of the day in my office, we count our wins, and then we pick ourselves back up the next day and step forward. This work is not for the faint of heart. It's hard work, and sometimes it's discouraging work. But we know through all of these multi-channel approaches that we are starting to see the needle move. And thankfully, people like Charlene that are leading work in states that are a few steps ahead of us have given us the inspiration and the support we need so that we can be that support for those states that are a few steps behind us.
Wonderful. I really love your approach to making sure every single student in West Virginia has access to a certified teacher. Fantastic. Dr. Russell, what about you? Why should we be concerned about the teacher shortage?
You know, just ditto to everything that Dr. Warren just said. Absolutely. We in Tennessee have several rural districts, and we face those same challenges. And it is the utmost priority for us, just like you said, to make sure that every one of our teachers here in Tennessee, we like to say from Memphis to Mountain City, every student deserves, you know, a highly qualified teacher. And so this teacher shortage in America, it really is a critical issue that's far reaching. And so the implications of our education system and our society as a whole, I had the privilege as I transitioned and spent those 2.5 years in the workforce world, just seeing the education issues from a different perspective. And so today in Tennessee, over 7,000 teachers are already eligible to retire. And by 2024, that number will add another 3,300 teachers. So you're looking at over 10,000 teachers across the state this time next year who will be eligible for retirement. When you put that up against the 2021 Ed Prep report card that reflected a continuing decline in the number of Tennesseans completing the educator prep programs, that's scary. So there was only 3,034 Tennessee teacher prep completers in the 1920 school year. And you compare that to 3,702 completers in the 1450 school year, you see that there was an 18% decrease. In those 5 years, there was an 18% decrease in the number of people who were completing the educator prep programs. So these are the kinds of data that inspire us at the Grow Your Own Center to find these innovative ways to strengthen the teacher pipeline in our state. And so we're very proud. This work is not for the faint of heart. It is hard work. And we're proud to say that right now we have over 700 registered teacher apprentices in Tennessee. That is over 20% of the number of people who actually completed an ed prep program in the 1920 school year. So the innovation is paying off, but just being real about those numbers. There are 5 points really I want to talk about outside of just the education world of why we need to be concerned about this. The first and the most immediate significant consequence is that the teacher shortage is going to have an adverse effect on student learning. A shortage of qualified teachers can result in larger class sizes, less individualized attention, and a decrease in the overall quality of education. And students are going to struggle to achieve their full potential when there aren't enough qualified teachers available to serve them with fidelity. The second point, inequity in education. We talk about this a lot. Inequity in education, the teacher shortage tends to affect the disadvantaged communities and schools disproportionately. And so these schools often struggle to attract and retain qualified teachers. And so this is going to exacerbate educational inequities. Students in low income areas are often most likely to have that inexperienced or unqualified educator. And so thinking about that, how does that impact our workforce as a whole? So the existing teachers who are often tasked to do more with fewer resources, the shortage, it places a big burden on those who are choosing to stay in the classroom. And that burden often doesn't make it very attractive for new teachers, right? They see the teachers who are in the trenches, they're struggling because they have that heavier workload. So it really is impacting the workforce of the teachers. But when you think about this on a larger scale, it also has economic and social consequences. So a strong education system is essential for a nation's economic and social well-being. The teacher shortage can hinder workforce development and competitiveness because a well-educated population is vital for innovation and economic growth. So when you have that high quality education system, it's going to contribute to more social cohesion and civic engagement. One of the conversations I had a lot with industry partners looking to move to Tennessee when I was with the Department of Labor is, what's the workforce? If I move there, are there going to be people who will come to my place and work? And that starts with a good teacher in the classroom, right? We've got to have quality teachers in the classroom to prepare that workforce in order to attract and to improve economic development for all industries.
So you mentioned the retirement cliff. That is absolutely a huge part of the teacher shortage that's just going to kind of exacerbate it later on. And I really loved the 5 big points that you made, Dr. Russell, about how this doesn't just impact the kids within the school, but it's a pretty massive impact in the community as a whole. So both of you mentioned grow your own models and registered apprenticeships for teachers and things like that. So tell me a little bit more about these models. How do they work? Why have they been so successful? And Dr. Warren, you had mentioned, there's failures along with success, right? So what are some of the challenges you both have experienced with these kind of innovative approaches?
So we launched last year in our pilot year with 27 counties out of 55 in West Virginia. If you look at West Virginia as a state, we have about 250,000 students statewide over about a 25,000 square foot area. We have 23,000 professional educators. So a small state, but very spread out geographically, and very spread out as far as economic support. So in West Virginia, we have a target audience of students who are low SES, first generation college going, and West Virginia is the only state that is fully encompassed by the Appalachia region. So we have students who we want to provide those opportunities by reducing barriers, increasing support, reducing barriers, including cost and time. So the Grow Your Own Pathway to Teaching that was launched last year, we had 250 students in the pilot year, and these students complete 1 year of college coursework while they are still in high school in their junior and senior year. So they complete 24 college credit hours, gen ed, plus 4 education foundation courses, and then they graduate from high school and move straight into college as a sophomore. They complete 2 years at the college level, completing their coursework, and then in that final year, they go back to their home county where they have signed a service agreement, and they complete their clinical year. We have a mandated undergraduate residency in West Virginia, so they complete their clinical year as the teacher of record. Our counties have committed to hiring a full-time employee that will support that cohort of residents who are in that clinical year. And then they also are still enrolled in college, so they're getting support from their college as well. So it's like 2 layers of support for those students, because one of the concerns we got from our EPPs was, why are you putting a 19, 20-year-old student in as a teacher of record? And so we're not only are we immersing them, it's work-based learning, on-the-job training, but they are also getting that double level of support from the county and from the university. They can also be earning a salary. They're earning seniority and benefits in that senior year. So we're reducing their cost in their final year and eliminating their cost in their first year. Of course, we are working with the legislature, the governor, workforce, accessing WIOA funds, accessing federal grants through the U.S. Department of Labor to find, identify ways that we can eventually meet that vision of providing a cost-free college education to these students. We have a great partnership with our Division of Rehabilitation Services. So identifying our students, like we have a partnership with the West Virginia School for the Deaf and the Blind. So there are students there that are enrolled in the Grow Your Own Pathway. As a disability consumer, the Division of Rehabilitation Services will completely 100% cover the college education for those students, including mentoring, textbooks, wraparound supports, tutoring, as well as their tuition. So looking for innovative ways that we can support those students in all of these innovative pathways is very important. The question that just popped up in the chat, in their 4th year, they do pay tuition, but we are working with our institutions to negotiate that cost down, similar to what has been done in Tennessee, again, who's our shining beacon that we follow, because what we're trying to do is create competition so that there is a reduction or a slashing of that tuition cost. We're also getting ready to enter into a pilot that was legislatively approved with our Higher Education Policy Commission starting this fall, and they are going to assume all of the dual credit tuition for students who are in this and other pathways. Last year, in the pilot year, we used philanthropic funding to pay that dual credit tuition. So I've been able to transition that dual credit or that philanthropic support to other areas, so we can work with tuition and materials and textbooks and mentoring. So really thinking about our challenges, I would say that our biggest challenge has been our collaboration with our educator prep programs. The leadership at the time, which has since changed in West Virginia, but the leadership here in the Department of Ed was that we wanted everyone to be involved that wanted to be involved. So as a result, I wanted to start with a pilot of maybe 8 counties and 1 EPP. Instead, I started with 27 counties and 15 EPPs, some CTCs and some 4 years. So that was the choice that was not under my authority. So we had to make that work. But really getting our EPPs to come to the table as stakeholders and agree upon which of those Ed Foundation courses they would be willing to accept guaranteed transferable between institutions. That was a huge challenge. In West Virginia, if it's a Gen Ed course, it automatically is transferred, but those Ed Foundation courses looked a little different. So I would say that was the biggest challenge and continues to be. Anytime I listen to a webinar or attend a conference, I hear that collaboration between K-12 and higher education is a challenge. Not that our EPPs don't want to be innovative, it's just a little harder for them to do so. So getting the leadership on board at our colleges and universities, I find that the CTCs are much more malleable and flexible and able to turn on a dime than our 4 years. But I think I would have to cite that that's been our biggest challenge, is making sure that we have those partnerships in place with the higher ed, and that we have people on board that believe in this as much as we do and believe that this is a way we can move the needle in reference to teacher shortages.
So Dr. Warren, what have been some of the primary pushbacks that you've come up against with this?
Well, the primary pushback from the educator prep programs, number one, the cost of the courses. I just heard Prentice Chandler again. I'm referring back to him. He said on a webinar just yesterday that I listened to, he said, the concern was that we would lose money as a college of education. But when we increased the number of students and looked at the federal funding, we actually have increased revenue for our university. So that's been a big concern. We have one institution I'm working with right now that they really are pushing back on providing a cost-effective dual credit, because we have a $75 minimum requirement through Higher Education Policy Commission, but institutions can set a higher tuition rate if they choose to do so. So making sure that that's in place. And then back to that course curriculum. We developed in-house the curriculum for the 4 Education Foundation courses, but we told our institutions, you can align with our learning objectives if you would rather use your course. And if there's a 70% or more alignment, then we will transcript that course for the high school students. But getting them to come to the table and agree on what those gen ed courses would be, that was a huge challenge, because institutions tend to believe that the courses they provide and the programs that they have in their course catalog are the best. So coming to a consensus on, do we say that we're all going to accept biology as the gen ed science? Are we all going to accept U.S. history as the social studies requirement for gen ed? That was a huge pushback from our EPPs, just coming to the table and saying, we want to participate, but you have to be a designated pathway provider. So you have to fall in with the parameters of what we require for our program.
Thank you for sharing kind of that journey and some of the big obstacles you all have kind of had to navigate. I do appreciate that transparency. Dr. Russell, what has it been like for you all in Tennessee with your Grow Your Own model?
Sure. So just an overview of our model. In January 22, we did become the first state to register the teacher apprenticeship program. And in this model, the Tennessee Department of Education is our sponsor. The school districts serve as our employer partners and the EPPs as the training provider. And so, as I mentioned, we currently have over 700 registered teacher apprentices across the state, over 70 school districts that are serving as approved employer partners, and 10 EPPs that are serving as those approved training providers. So this model really empowers the local school districts to take an active role in developing their future teachers. It recognizes that communities best understand their unique needs and can play a vital role in growing their own pool of educators. So really what we've worked to do is create a pipeline with multiple on-ramps. So one of the on-ramps may be the career and technical education space for high school students. They may be in what we call a TAP program, a teaching as a profession program, and that's their career pathway in high school. And during that pathway, they may be getting some work-based learning opportunities. They may be taking some dual enrollment courses that will help them transition to the community college space. Here in Tennessee, we are very fortunate that community college is at no cost. So students coming directly out of the high school space can take advantage of the Tennessee Promise. For adults who are considered an independent on the FAFSA, they can take advantage of Tennessee Reconnect and get their associate's degree at no cost at one of our community colleges. And what we're working on then is to build that pipeline from high school to the community college space and then into one of our 4-year EPP partners. Obviously, the heart of this program is with those teacher apprentices. So aspiring educators, they're, like I mentioned, they are often residents of the community themselves and are paired with experienced mentor teachers within the school district. They work collaboratively in those classrooms while they're also pursuing the coursework. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit in the challenges here in a minute, because Dr. Warren is exactly right. Not all of our EPPs are situated very well to serve working learners. Sometimes it feels like we're trying to, fit a square peg into a round hole and make it look like a traditional pathway. And when you're talking about an incumbent worker who maybe has been a para for 10 or 15 years, that traditional program may not meet their educational needs. And so really working with the district to identify those candidates, whether they're coming out of the high school space or there's someone who's worked in that district for a long time, and helping them find the program that best meets their needs. The model also focuses on recruiting candidates from within the local communities, not only to address the teacher shortage, but also to strengthen that connection between the educator and the students they serve. One of the best things that we've seen come out of this is that it really has increased the diversity of our teacher talent pool. We are starting to see educators reflect the communities that they serve, and that really has made a difference. Some of the challenges that we have found, any new initiative is going to be met with some pushback, right? Change is hard. And so we have had some of that pushback from our EPP partners, from some of our district partners, because this just feels different, right? It feels a little bit different. So it can be resource intensive. Here in Tennessee, registered apprentices do not bear the cost of the apprenticeship. And that is across all industries. So education is no different there. So really working with EPPs to find those braided funding opportunities, like I said, using the Tennessee Promise or the Tennessee Reconnect to help candidates get their associate's degree, get those first 60 credit hours out of the way, whether that be in a dual enrollment model or whether they're attending classes at their local community college. And then working with the EPPs to help them identify all of the different funding sources that are out there to braid together. We stood this up with ESSER funds. So we did have some funding there to get this program stood up. And we did have some cohorts who went through and were fully funded with ESSER funds. Like any funding source, that comes to an end, those ESSER funds are sunsetting. And we are in what we're calling a bridge year. And during this bridge year, we're working with our EPP partners to move into a more sustainable funding model. So we were fortunate enough that our General Assembly, our governor, that he did give us, some funding, recurring funding year to year. And so we're working on ways that the Grow Your Own Center can provide a set amount for apprentices to come in and really help support, whether it be continuing to supplement tuition, or maybe it's the books, or maybe it's paying for the testing. But really it's helping those EPPs and those districts think about, this is a model that really can serve individuals who may not get to licensure without it, right? Because one of the things that we found, to echo Dr. Warren, is that there's not a lack of people who want to be teachers. We have been collecting data since fall of 2022 in our aspiring apprentice profile, and we've collected over 1,500 applicants who want to be teachers, but all of them have expressed the need to continue working while they pursue licensure. They're just not at a place in life where they can step back and go to school for full time. They're needing that. And so the apprenticeship model really does work well with that, because it's an opportunity for us to say, hey, districts, we have this talent pool and they're looking for jobs, right? They want to work, they want to be teachers. So then the district, who really is leading this charge, can interview those candidates, or they can have a talent pool of people who are already working in the district and support them with a well-trained mentor teacher that helps them through that journey. And research really shows that mentor piece is key. It really does improve your retention rate when they have someone there in the school who's helping them navigate that. And then of course they have that layer of support there at the EPP as well. So maintaining the quality of education provided for and by the teachers, that's been one of the challenges and the pushbacks that we've heard from EPPs. We don't want to water down our program, and we don't want them to water down their program at all. That's not what we're asking. These are still, individuals who are pursuing that teacher licensure. It is not a workaround by any means. If anything, it is more rigorous than your traditional program because they are working adults. But again, helping that EPP format that coursework to meet those working adult needs, that can be a challenge. And then finally, expanding the program to meet the demands of growing teacher shortage, scaling it, to Dr. Warren's point, we started with a pilot that was Austin P and Clarksville Montgomery schools. And so we had a pilot of one EPP and one school system, and we've scaled that. And that is difficult because every district looks differently, right? Every district has different hiring needs. They have a different mentor pool. Every EPP has a different capacity to serve those working learners. So scaling it can be a challenge, but the opportunities, we have testimonials all the time of apprentices who say, we wouldn't have been able to do this, right? There's no way I would have been able to be a licensed teacher if this program had not been available to me. And that's the work that is worth it, and for those districts to know that this is a candidate who has been working as a para for several years, and now they finally get to earn that license and move into that teacher of record space when they may have been doing a lot of those things all along. It's been very rewarding. So the challenges are there. But I would tell anybody who is thinking about moving into the grow your own space, it's worth it. It is most definitely worth it. There are people out there who want to be teachers. It's just finding those barriers and finding ways to remove them.
So I know, Dr. Warren, you had mentioned that the students in your program do a clinical year where they're the teacher of record in the classroom. Dr. Russell, do your students do something, or your teacher apprentices, do they do something similar with like a clinical year?
So that looks different in each model, and we're still working that out. Really what we want to see in an apprenticeship and a registered apprenticeship program, that on-the-job learning is that clinical experience. They are working alongside a mentor teacher. And so that's really what a registered apprenticeship program should look like. What that looks like now is they're definitely not doing your traditional student teaching, because we had several districts who said, I can't have an employee who I'm paying to do a job to step outside of that job. We can't hire someone to replace them. The apprentice obviously cannot stop working, because that's a requirement of being a registered apprentice, is that you are working. And so that does look different. And we have some EPPs who already had an internship model where they were doing something very similar to this already. So it was an easy transition. We have some EPPs who were still in that traditional student teaching model, who are working through, how do we credit that on-the-job learning for the clinical experience that is required, right? And we just had a meeting on that today. And so continuing to work through that, we have had models where the students can transition into a job embedded space where they are teacher of record. But what we like to see is that they've had at least 2 semesters prior to that as apprentices. We want to know that they have worked with mentor teachers for at least 2 semesters before they move into that teacher of record space as a job embedded candidate. So it looks different across the state, depending on where the EPP is and depending on what the district needs are.
And if I could clarify, the Tennessee model started with the adult learner. I mean, that was their jumping off place. In West Virginia, we started with the youth apprenticeship. So we started with the high school students. So that's one of the reasons it looks very different as far as the on-the-job learning. So we started with the students in high school. And I believe that Tennessee is moving toward that now as we are transitioning to try to bring on the paraprofessionals. So in our adult learner space, our paraprofessionals will have that opportunity to do the job embedded portfolio based learning while they are full-time employed. So that's one of the reasons why it looks different, looks differently, because we're starting with the high school student in our Gray Room pathway. That was our original jumping off point. On-ramp. I love the on-ramp terminology.
I know, it's so, the visual is so fantastic with the on-ramp analogy. So both of you, talk to me a little bit about the apprentice work, or that the apprentice experience, I guess, for these teacher apprentices. What does that look like? How often are they in the classroom? Are they lesson planning? Are they teaching components of lessons? Kind of walk me through what that practicum or apprenticeship model looks like.
Well, for our high school students who are in the Gray Room West Virginia pathway, they complete ideally, and we have some flexibility built in. So counties have and EPPs have opportunities to create something that's more customized to their needs. But in general, our students begin in their junior year of high school. Educator Rising is a CTE organization that sits in my division as well. So we do a lot of work merging those two, because really our pathway is a hybrid CTE. It's not a front-facing CTE. Our students aren't completers. They don't take the NOCTI. It's an academic pathway, but we have our courses, our Ed Foundation courses are coded for Perkins funding. So our counties still are able to pull down funding for those students. So they complete a 15-hour practicum in their junior year, and they earn an apprenticeship wage for those hours. And in the senior year of high school, they complete a 100-hour practicum, and they have an increased wage for that senior year. And then in our policy for our teacher prep, our traditional teacher prep, we require 125 hours of field experience in the college year, sophomore and junior year of college. So we have that built into our apprenticeship. So our students are paid, and our apprentices are paid another incremental wage increase for those 125 hours. And then they earn the living wage, benefits, and seniority as an apprentice in that clinical year. So it equals the about 1,800 hours of on-the-job training, and they're paid incrementally through their high school and college experience. And then really what our vision is once those students have been immersed in that clinical year as the paid teacher of record as an apprentice, then that county is going to hire that apprentice. So as a local control state, we can't mandate service agreements, but we encourage our counties to sign a service agreement with that student so that that student will commit to 3 years, similar to some of our statewide teacher scholarships that we have through our Higher Education Policy Commission, where they sign a service agreement or they repay their loans. We don't have a repayment policy, but we encourage our counties to say, if we're going to invest in you as an apprentice, that we require you give us 3 years. And one other thing I'm just going to throw in there that we just solidified yesterday, we have a second launch program for our technology. So we have a division that will refurbish any technology that comes back from our schools. So they are providing, through our second launch, we're going to be able to provide technology to all of our apprentices that they will be able to keep and take with them. So that was something really exciting that just happened this week.
Oh, that is really great. And I will tell you, as somebody who went more of the traditional route to be a teacher, being paid to do my practicum and my student teaching would have been life changing
for you and your parents. Yes.
Yes.
My parents would have been thrilled. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, what a fantastic approach. Dr. Russell, what does it look like, that apprenticeship model? What does it look like in Tennessee?
Sure. So from the incumbent worker from the adult learner space, what that looks like is it's often a para who is already working in that district. So they are already earning a wage. And what the district agrees is to provide that mentor, continue to pay them in an increment that increases each year. And the number of on-the-job learning hours that they get really is going to be determined by where they are in their educational journey, right? So if they already have an associate's degree, then they may only be 2 years out from licensure. And during that 2 years, they're going to continue to work with that mentor teacher and take those classes. It is recommended that they are in there with their mentor teacher or with a mentor teacher for at least 3 days a week. But most of our paras, as we know, the paras really are pulling, they're pulling everyone's weight right now in this crisis, right? So they're in there with teachers every day. They are seeing education. A lot of times they are in there doing small group instruction. So that's really what that looks like. They continue to do the job that they've been doing, but with that mentorship, and then the district works to build in that time where they are doing those things specific to the EPP requirements, right? Where they are in the mentor teacher. And it really does look different across districts. In our pilot with Clarksville Montgomery County Schools, what that looked like was those apprentices were actually in with a teacher for the duration. They were essentially co-teaching for the duration. Some districts can do that and some districts simply can't. Your smaller districts are not going to be able to hire someone to do that. And so the model looks different across the state, but we do have parameters around these are the requirements, right? They have to spend X number of hours in a classroom with a mentor teacher. And again, the number of on-the-job learning hours they get, it's going to depend on where they start those journeys. So for those post-bac people coming to it who already have a bachelor's degree, that's going to be at least a year, right? They're going to be working as paras in the school system with a mentor teacher for at least a year while they're working on getting that initial licensure post-bac, whether that be just in a post-bac licensure program or in a master's program.
It's nice that school districts and communities are able to kind of customize it to meet the needs
Sure.
of their students and their schools. That's a really wonderful approach. So, Dr. Russell, I believe that you had mentioned earlier about mentor teachers and kind of how incredibly important that is. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you prepare teachers to become mentor teachers?
Absolutely. I was recently working on a piece from an interview that we did earlier this year with a director of schools and an EPP. And he had a conversation with a teacher who was retiring. And she said, if I'd have had the opportunity to be a mentor teacher, I may have reconsidered. I may not have retired. So really giving these teachers the opportunity to be reinvigorated and train them. So in Tennessee, our on-the-job learning competencies are from the TEAM rubric, which is the rubric that teachers are observed on, and giving them the opportunity to get that team training and then to work with an apprentice and say, look, this is the team rubric. Once you're teacher of record, these are the things that your administration is going to be looking for in your instruction. It's incredibly important. At the Grow Your Own Center, we've created a mentor toolkit that we have shared with all of our districts. We've shared it with all of our EPPs. We've given them resources that they can customize to meet their own needs and really encourage the EPPs to work in partnership with the districts to recognize that these mentors, it looks different, right? It looks different than the mentor teacher in your traditional student teaching. These are people who are working daily with these apprentices and to have those guided conversations around that team rubric, because in an apprenticeship model there are the competencies. This is a competency-based apprenticeship, and so for them to work through that on-the-job learning means that they're becoming proficient in those competencies. So really having those conversations now with EPPs and with school districts to say, hey, you now have a tool in this on-the-job learning rubric to say, okay, you are here on the rubric. We need you to be proficient in these particular competencies before we can have that discussion of you moving into that teacher of record space. So it really is a tool for the EPPs, for the school district, and for the mentors and the apprentices to all be on the same page. And, as a teacher, I like the idea of knowing those expectations up front, right? As that apprentice, the mentor knows, the apprentice knows these are the things that we're looking for. And in my mind, I think, as a teacher, maybe maybe one domain on that team rubric wasn't my strong suit, but maybe I knew that the teacher next door was very strong in that. Giving the mentors the tools to say, hey, spend some time in the classroom next door and really pay attention to how she does her planning. Look at this team rubric and look at what the indicators are in the planning domain and really watch how she does that. I think it really is an opportunity for a lot of that to fall to the local level, right? So that I know our former commissioner, Penny Schwinn, she liked to say, so that we don't have a first year teacher. And I love that, because I've met very few teachers who will tell you that the first year in the classroom was the best year of their life. It usually was challenging. And so now, we're preparing a workforce of educators who don't have to experience that. And we are giving tools to those mentors to help with that.
I love that. I know that as a first year teacher, sometimes you just suffer in silence in your own classroom because you don't want people to know.
Yeah.
So I love that, partnering with that mentor teacher and be like, no, reach out to this person, connect with this person. What a beautiful, beautiful setup. Dr. Warren, in West Virginia, do you all use mentor teachers as well?
We sure do. We have local control again, so our mentors are hired and trained on a local level. However, from the State Department of Ed, we do provide optional mentor professional learning that is built on the New Teacher Center and Charlotte Danielson's work. And then, as Dr. Russell said, if you think about the competency based of the apprenticeship, we aligned our apprenticeship model and our competencies with our teacher evaluation system. And our teacher evaluation system is also aligned with our clinical evaluation system that our educator preps came together as stakeholders and created several years ago. So there's some alignment between all three. So we do use that clinical evaluation tool with our apprentices. So there's a nice transition from the way they're being evaluated as a clinical student and the way that they're being evaluated as a first year teacher. And I totally agree with what Dr. Russell said. Our vision is through the apprenticeship model, through the Grow Your Own model, through the residency model, that we are eliminating a first year teacher, because we want those individuals to be ready to start on day one and be productive, contributing members of our teacher workforce. And I think that these initiatives provide us the tools that we need so that that can actually happen. Because when you spend a year in a classroom, you know how to start the year, you know how to end the year, you know how to schedule a field trip, you know how to plan, you know how to assess. All of those things, I look back, I was a first year teacher and I was administering the CTBS test for McGraw-Hill. That tells you how old I am. And I can remember clear as day waiting for someone to come and tell me how to administer that test. And the morning of the test came and nobody showed up. So, you think back, I'm a pre-mentor teacher. And so think about all of those daily processes and procedures that our clinical students, our apprentice students, our residency students, they already know how to do it. So they're going to be able to start on day one and be productive. And I think that's exciting for the teaching workforce.
Absolutely. And definitely to keep them, retain them, because you're taking away some of that mystery and that stress in that beginning of the year, but also just the impact on students.
Right.
They already know all of that. So they're able to spend more time building relationships with the kids in their classrooms. Wonderful. I love both of those mentor teacher models. Thank you both for sharing. So the last question I have for both of you and for our participants, don't forget, you can ask questions either in the chat or using the Q&A model. We're going to open it up here for questions here in just a moment. But Dr. Russell and Dr. Warren, the last question I have for you is, what are your recommended first steps for states or policy leaders who want to pursue some of these innovative teacher apprenticeship models?
I would say that you need to make connections with other states. Emma in Tennessee was one of the first people I ran into at a conference, and she sat down and spent time with me. I find that the people that are working in this space are very willing to have conversations with you and provide you information and resources and tips and guidance. I would definitely suggest that you reach out to your apprenticeship representative in your state. from the U.S. Department of Labor. We have found that that individual has been an outstanding partner here. Reach out to your workforce development office, make those connections. We really just went and sat down and had a meeting and said, this is what we want to do. How can you support us? And started a conversation that has become a relationship, a strong partnership, and even a friendship in some cases for both of those organizations. Those are definitely places to start. Reach out to some national organizations. The National Center for Grow Your Own, David Donaldson, is an outstanding partner, and he's willing to give you information whether you hire him on a contract basis or not. And he started in Tennessee as well. In January in San Antonio, Texas, there's going to be the first national convening for apprenticeships on January 25th and 26th, I believe. That's a partnership between the National Center for Grow Your Own and NASTEC. And that's an excellent place. The National Educator Shortage Summit, I believe, is in February in Phoenix, and that's ASPA. That's a great resource as well. But go to some State Department websites, reach out and just do some research and reading. I believe we're up to 25 states perhaps that have registered apprenticeships now, starting with Tennessee and West Virginia. So there's a lot more information out there available to entities that are interested in getting into this space. And we're going to start seeing some great data, I think, that shows that this is moving the needle. It's not the only solution. It's not going to work by itself, but it absolutely is a contributing factor. And for us in West Virginia, it's an opportunity to keep our students at home. It's a workforce development initiative that's going to allow a West Virginia student to have reduced barriers so that they can pursue teaching and stay here in West Virginia and contribute to our economy. So just reach out. There are people willing to provide you information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. Russell, do you have any recommended first steps for states that are looking to get involved in this model?
So everything that Dr. Warren just said, be proactive. Definitely connect with your apprenticeship contact, whether you're an SAA state or an OA state. And I did put a link to a map there in the chat so that you can identify who your apprenticeship person is. Connect with them. I've done this work from the apprenticeship office and I've done this work from the Grow Your Own space. And that is a very, very important partnership. So connect with them. Do your research, take the numbers to the EPP partners, take the numbers to your districts and show them the need. Even now, as much of a crisis that we're in with the teacher shortage, there are a few districts who aren't feeling it. However, they may not have taken the time to look to see that a very large portion of their workforce is ready to retire soon. They may not have had the time to think through that. So approach this from a data informed and connect. Yes, absolutely connect with all of these people and recognize that this is a tool. It is a tool in the toolbox to address this need, and that it cannot be just trying to fit working adults into a traditional program. Recognize that there is a need for alternative pathways to licensure and be open to that collaboration. This really is change management, and you really do have to have all voices at the table to make sure that everybody is heard and represented and that the work can move forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now we're going to open up the floor to any questions. So panelists or participants, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function at the bottom. And if you haven't noticed already, our panelists have been dropping quite a few links in the chat to the different programs and the different resources they've been talking about. So make sure you do open up the chat and check those out. You can tell I'm a former teacher. I'm okay with wait
Wait
time and
time.
awkward silence, right? Well, thank you both so much, Dr. Warren and Dr. Russell. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak with both of you this afternoon and to hear about just the really wonderful and innovative work you both are doing in your states. I think sometimes teaching gets left out of apprenticeship talks or work-based learning talks and discussions and things like that. So it's really wonderful to see that you both are elevating this in your states for your students, for your economy, for your workforce, etc. So thank you both so
Thank
much. Oh,
you.
we do have one question that
We have a
dropped into the
question.
chat real quick. Are you using WIOA funds for any of this?
We are using WIOA funds for our paraprofessional pipeline and for our Grow Your Own. Yes, we are. As well as the SAFE grant, the state expansion grant from the U.S. Department of Labor.
Beautiful. What about in Tennessee, Dr. Russell? Do you all use WIOA funding?
There have been some apprentices who have accessed WIOA funding. What we're doing really is to build that relationship between the districts so that the districts and the EPPs can connect those individuals with their local American Job Centers to identify, because it really is on an individual basis here in Tennessee of who is eligible for those WIOA funding. So yes, there have been some apprentices who were able to access that to cover different support services, and around that was what I wanted to say too about it. For those of you who want to do this next step, if you're in the workforce space, sometimes we don't think about our school districts as employers, right? Start to think about your school districts as employers who have incumbent workers who need to be upskilled. And so when you start to use that workforce language in the education space, it helps the people who have access to the WIOA funding better understand how that funding can be used in the teacher apprenticeship space.
I amen that, because I know we found when we first started, we really had to educate workforce and labor, and they had to educate us because we were speaking two different languages, and we're in our second year, and that we're just getting to a point where we have operational definitions for each other. So I totally second that comment.
Wonderful. I think that's a really great place to end. Thank you both so much. Everyone who sat in on this webinar this afternoon, thank you so much for your participation. And I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.